It's the Full Court Press with Eric Franson and Jason Walker.
Welcome back to the to the show that we're doing right now.
Following the local teams, breaking down the biggest games with in-depth analysis and team interviews.
There's going to be much higher expectations, sense of awareness of what we bring to the table.
Join the show by calling into 435-752-1069 or text 435-339-0321. It's the Full Court Press.
Rose, ends it. Yes! Caught! Touchdown! They did it!
All right, everyone, welcome to the second hour here of the Full Court Press. Jason Walker here. Eric Franson, he's going to jump up to football practice, just getting things ready there. We do have an interview to start this second hour. We've been talking Utah State football, but we wanted to have a chance to bring on Utah State's new athletic director, Diana Sabau, and we've got her on here. Diana, you there?
Sure am. Jason, how you doing?
I'm doing very good. How are you doing?
Well, thanks for the opportunity to be on today.
Yeah, we're glad we could have you on. I know it's been a hectic first week or so for you. You've been all over the place talking to media. I imagine talking to a lot of people behind the scenes. So we're very glad that you could make time to come on here.
Thanks so much. Always a pleasure, and I look forward to being a regular.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have you on sometimes. Obviously, a very hectic time to be on. So I know a lot of fans are just curious to, what's going on. It's behind the scenes with so much going on with conference expansion, the Mountain West, and, just obviously, and then there's the job of being an athletic director in general. But I guess kind of first question is what was some of the first stuff that you were doing, when you started? I think it was last Monday was your first official day. Like, what's job one for you? Like getting your desk set up? Like, I guess what was the first thing you were trying to get done?
Well, Jason, I think fall is the best time of year because we have this just convergence onto campus with our student athletes, our student body, and we already have our volleyball team, our women's soccer team. Cross country starts this weekend. Volleyball and soccer have already been on the road. Volleyball has 2 matches at home this week, tomorrow and Thursday. And obviously we're kicking off football in Iowa Saturday, so it's really a lot of excitement, a ton of energy. Football camp has been hard this summer for our young men. Blake's worked a lot over the summer with putting his, in the offseason, putting his coaching staff together, making a few adjustments, bringing in some quality character. And, now he's running the offense and the quarterback, so really excited for that. I think we got a fast team, and I hope we can go in with some quiet confidence. My first day, I'm on week 2, day 2. And I started early in the morning last week meeting with some of our teams that were just coming back and having our team meetings, taking care of some of that business behind the scenes with compliance and with academics and with our trainers, just getting everybody squared away and on the right path for a really successful athletic and academic year.
So I guess maybe you've already touched on this a little bit, but just like, I've always kind of worried, especially when you get these, high, executive positions, what does, a day in the life of an athletic director look like? What are you doing on a day-to-day basis? Because, players, boots on the ground, they're running drills and things like that, and coaches are coaching. But, what, is the role for an athletic director as far as, are you helping schedule things? Is it a lot of, compliance stuff? What's generally, a day for you?
First and foremost for me, really, it's about the people. It's about our student athletes. It's about the community. It's about our donors that have made Aggie athletics a priority in their giving. And right now I'm on a learning campaign. I'm just listening and learning. Last week I met with some of our donors, went to a few events, met with some official visits with some parents with their student athletes that got brought to campus, went to practices. And, I want to be present. I want to make sure that our student athletes feel supported, that our coaches feel supported. Talked today about some scheduling and some future scheduling for football. Went to Salt Lake City for some media interviews on Sunday. Last Wednesday, went to Salt Lake City to meet with some of our historic donors that have been very kind to our athletics department financially, and just really hoping to grow those relationships. One of the responsibilities of the athletics director is to make sure that we're taking care of our student athlete experience, and that's my number one priority, that we have to grow comprehensive excellence all across our programs, our 16 varsity programs. And that is not only, reaching out and talking with our donors today, but how do we grow that financially for the future? And I think, especially with conference realignment and all that's happening right now, athletics directors have to be future-focused to make sure that there is sustainability within their athletics department.
So as you've been traveling around, talking to all these different people, I know traveling between Salt Lake and Logan, because there's obviously connections with the rest of northern Utah, but as you've been in Logan, talking to the people, talking to everyone who's living here, like, what's been your impression of Logan? I mean, you've been here all of a few weeks, but just what's been your impression of the community and just kind of the state as a whole, here in Utah and in Logan?
Well, first, it's absolutely beautiful. I think everyone is spoiled with the beauty that surrounds you every day. It's breathtaking for me, coming from the East and the Midwest. I've never had that on a daily basis, so that's a really nice, just a visual and mental change for me. I actually met some people. I went up to Ogden, too, so I don't want to forget that, and met with some of our great donors there also. So really, everyone's been so nice, very welcoming, super kind. I've just found the pride to be tremendous. There's excessive pride for Aggie athletics, the foundation that has been built, and where we can take it to the next level and how we can continue winning and winning the right way is really important for our community and our fans. And we just need to get our student athletes to continue to give back to the community and to continue to get out there. I think during COVID, maybe, it had to stop because of COVID, and we're not really back to the level that we have been in the past, so I look forward to getting after that really quickly here.
So you mentioned, I know in your introductory press conference, you used the phrase, like the next level, and you talked about getting back to maybe a pre-COVID level, but I was kind of curious with that language of, getting to the next level. That's something you talked about in your introductory press conference. Like, what does that look like? Like, how would, fans know that we've kind of reached the next level? Like, what does that kind of mean, for Utah State athletics?
For Utah State athletics, I want that to be about consistency. I want that to be consistency in the student-athlete experience and in winning. So when I talk about the next level, I want Utah State athletics to be a constant pride point for the university, and that means that we are in the upper tier of the Mountain West Conference. To be 5th or 8th or 11th, that's not necessarily a pride point. And when you have coaching staff that can work together consistently over time, that increases your planning, that increases your discipline, and that increases, maximizes the student-athlete experience, and that produces winning. I'm a really competitive person, and I do believe that we have more to achieve here at USU, and that our student-athletes want that as well. I also think it's important that we continue to drive success in the Mountain West Conference, because we need to grow our brand presence, and we need to have, when I walk through the Salt Lake City airport, I don't see any Utah State gear, or I don't see any the presence. I don't see our Aggies present there, and I'd love to have that change in 2 years, or be able to have that pride extend well past Cache Valley. But that's not done quickly, and that's done over consistency over time, and that to me would be reaching the next level.
So I guess I don't know, maybe this is the magic question. If somebody knew the answer, they'd be fabulously wealthy. But I guess, how do you kind of, establish that consistency, I guess? Because obviously that's the goal. But, I mean, you've been around programs that have been consistent. I guess, is there a secret to how they get to that way?
Yeah, it really all goes back again to the people and the student-athlete experience. If we're providing remarkable experiences in their education, both in the classroom and on the court, on the field, no one is with our student-athletes more than our coaches. So we've got to have really, really good teachers. But those good teachers, those good coaches, when they achieve success, we've got to be able to retain them and keep them at Utah State. Our student-athletes, when they achieve success, we've got to be able to keep them out of the transfer portal and keep them at USU. If we keep looking at programs, like our men's basketball program last year, we had a coaching change, and then the entire roster left USU. We don't want to go back to that place again. That's a really difficult place, and it puts an extra challenge on our new coach with Danny Sprinkle on how to replenish and rebuild that roster quickly. So if we can maintain consistency and grow that student-athlete experience, I hope that we can keep our students here at USU and let them see how important it is to the community, the successes that they achieve.
So I guess maybe kind of following up on that, I guess, like, what are the kind of the first steps to, keeping the athletes here? Is you mentioned the student athlete experience? I imagine that's part of it. I know NIL gets brought up a lot. That's something a lot of people like to talk about. Is it just kind of a combination of those things to be able to keep athletes here?
It's a combination of all of that. I appreciate what you're saying, because you're right on. But we also have to grow our resources. We have to grow our fan base and grow those who care about Aggies athletics, so that they're also donating to helping our student athletes achieve more. Whether that's in nutrition, making sure that our student athletes always have the protein and the nutrition they need, the hydration that they need. Maybe it's in travel and how we're traveling to different events. Maybe that's just making sure that we have our facilities in the highest performing capacity so our student athletes can achieve success. We have some great facilities here, but I think it's time to look at the infrastructure and see, okay, what needs to be updated, what perhaps could be modernized, so that our student athletes say, like, yeah, this is the best place in the Mountain West to play.
I know that's one of the questions I think Eric was wanting to ask, is like, kind of just the state of the athletic department. I know you just kind of touched on it just now, but like, what are you feel like the strengths of this athletic department? Maybe, some areas of improvement. I guess, like, what is your kind of assessment? I know you haven't had a whole lot of time to assess everything, but just, your impression of the athletic department, its strengths, weaknesses, areas of improvement, your assessment so far.
Yeah, Jason, I was going to say, you're killing me. I've been here 2 weeks and this is my second week in 2 days. So
I need all the answers now. Absolutely.
I know, like, that's why I said we need to make this a long-term relationship here. But we have really great people here. We have really a great staff, from head coaches to facility managers to our equipment managers to our trainers. They really care deeply about our student athletes. I've been able to see that and really experience that firsthand. So that's paramount, really important to me as an athletics director, and how we're treating and improving that student-athlete experience. I think one of the areas that we can improve on is fundraising, and I think that we need to cultivate a broader base of those who care and want to give. We've had some really loyal, and I'm very grateful for the families that have established the foundation of USU athletics, but I know there's some others out there who want to be a part of this, and we just have to reach out to them and create an affinity and tell a story that they want to give and they want to contribute to what we're trying to achieve here.
So I know one of the things is obviously just hanging over all of college football, in Utah State especially, is, conference realignment. We talk about it pretty much every day on this show. Obviously the Mountain West, not necessarily in the thick of it, but certainly really involved, obviously now with the state of the Pac-12 or the Pac-4 or whatever we're calling it these days.
What are we calling it?
Yeah, I know. I've heard some people call it the Pac-X. It's just, it's something. But I guess just, what's, from your view, what's like Utah State? What's their kind of role? Like, where are they in terms of, conference realignment? Like, is there anything like you can do right now? Is it, trying to establish relationships, back to that, people game? Like, what's Utah State trying to do as far as being the best place when this kind of game of musical chairs is, done with for now, I guess?
Yeah, most importantly, Utah State, we need to all be aligned and in alignment with the Mountain West. Our presidents in the Mountain West are all in alignment with looking at every option for expanding the Mountain West. From my chair at Utah State University, we need to be the most competitive we can be so that we continue to provide value and have impact with the Mountain West. I think everybody has probably heard our Commissioner, Gloria Navarez, went to Washington State University last week and met with their president and met with their athletics director and various constituents on campus. And then she was at Utah State yesterday meeting with all of those entities as well, because we want them to know we want them to be a part of the Mountain West Conference. We think that's the best fit for them. And, but with that said, everyone who is in the Mountain West right now has to add to our value within our TV multimedia rights category. And that's going to come up, I believe, for bid in it expires, terms out in 3 years. And so, in 2 years or a year and a half, we really have to start that negotiation process. And if we don't bring value in winning, especially in football, and bring eyeballs to that television viewership, then we are not carrying our load in the Mountain West.
You mentioned, the conference being, a good fit for some teams maybe coming over from the former Pac-12. Like, what would the pitch be to teams to Washington State, to Oregon State, maybe to a team in the AAC? I don't know if that's something the Mountain West is looking into, but what's the overall pitch for those teams to join the Mountain West? I guess coming from the Pac-12, a former Power 5 conference, into what's been called a Group of 5 conference in the Mountain West.
Yeah, first of all, we're all very prideful in the fact that we win the right way. We all have very equitable programs with similar sports. We value the experiences of our student athletes. And geographically, it's a great fit because you're not having to have student athletes travel across the country. When you have to have a mandatory day off every week when you're in season per the NCAA, and then you have, especially an Olympic sport where you're going to have a midweek competition and a weekend, maybe one, maybe two competitions. If you're having to travel across the nation, you really have to stop and look at what that does to your student athletes, your physical well-being, your mental well-being, and your academics. So, geographically, it fits really well. Also, the viewership that we receive right now through our media agreement is high. We have great eyeballs on our games right now, and that's also part of that.
So, I just thought of one question. I don't know if it might be a super complex one, but I know one question is that the idea of like a Mountain West Pac-12 merger. Is that something that's plausible? I don't know. You may or may not be super involved
How
in
much
that.
more time do we have, my friend? It's really complex, and just as a quick level set, it's not something that can just be done overnight.
Yeah.
You can't just merge two conferences. There's a lot of governance that's involved with that, and so it's easy for people to say we should just merge, but the complexities of that make that reality extremely difficult.
Yeah, I know that's kind of been the impression. Is I don't know what that entails. Because that's something that everybody seems to say, but I'm just that's why some of your insiders how does that happen? And I guess the answer is just super complicated. I guess
it's complicated. It involves the NCAA's. It involves your boards, which is your presidents and your chancellors, and it would not be something that the faint of heart or a quick process could take place.
That feels like just the entirety of college sports. It's not for the faint of heart. It's a very complicated world.
I like to say if we have our center focus being student athletes, then we should be making right decisions every day. And sometimes, external factors are now guiding the industry, which we all have to just take a pause and make sure that that's where we want to be and that embraces our mission, our values, and our philosophies.
All right. Well, I think it's about all the questions I had for you today. I know. Hopefully,
are you sure?
I went through a bunch of questions. I don't know. That was about most of what I could think of because I wanted to ask about conference realignment. I don't know. I talked about NIL. I know I'll probably think of all the questions once we're done here.
Well, we can do this again sometime soon. I appreciate all of your audience, and I hope that they come out and support our teams this fall. Our women's volleyball is contagiously exciting. Our women's soccer is achieving great things as well. And then, of course, obviously, we have our football team that, we still have tickets available for all of our games, and we really hope to see some new faces in the stands.
Yeah. I guess I'll ask you just kind of this one more question. If there's something you want to accomplish year one here at Utah State, I know it can be tricky to accomplish, a lot of stuff that's visible on the outside. In year one, but if there's something you want to try and accomplish, what would it be?
I have about 5 things right now on my short list, but I'm still on my listening tour, and I think it would be premature if I put those out there before I meet with all of our key stakeholders internally and externally, and that's on campus as well. So I would just like to be disciplined to that process before I publicly give you that 1 or 2 must achieve within this first year.
I'll
be ready once I talk to everybody.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, that's a big thing for you is listening to everybody, and that's very nice. As someone obviously coming into the Valley, I was an outsider once. I grew up in Davis County, and I had to come here, and I've had to learn a lot. So it's a process trying to learn the history of a community in such a short time.
Yeah, and I deeply appreciate what the foundation that has been set here, and the foundation of success and the facilities, and just how much the community truly cares. I see that it's apparent to me every day, and I want to be respectful to that as I listen and learn and build this new strategy.
All right, well, we do need to cut to break. We're so glad we could have you on. I would love to have you on in the near future, just as you get further along and as there's more and more updates with obviously with your time here at Utah State.
You got it. Thanks so much. Have a good rest of the show, and go Aggies.
All right, thank you so much. That was Utah State Athletics Director Diana Sabau. We'll be able to have that full interview after the show. We'll post that. We're going to go ahead and take a break, and we'll be back with more here on the Full Court Press.
This is Cache County Fire Chief Rod Hammer. Due to current and forecasted weather conditions coupled with extremely dry vegetation, the state forester, in consultation with fire officials, has determined that measures must be taken to prevent the ignition of forest and rangeland fires. Therefore, the following acts are prohibited in unincorporated Cache County and on state lands. 1. There are no open fires of any kind except within established public facilities, in improved campgrounds, picnic areas, or in permanently constructed fire pits at private homes where running water is present. There is no smoking allowed except within an enclosed vehicle, trailer, or building, a developed recreation site, or while stopped in an area that is paved or free from dry vegetation. No discharging or using any fireworks, tracer ammunition, or other pyrotechnic devices, including exploding targets. No cutting, welding, or grinding metal in areas of dry vegetation. No operating a motorcycle, chainsaw, ATV, or any other small internal combustion engine without an approved and working spark arrestor. The Cache County Fire District and the firefighters in Cache County appreciate your help.
This is Ryan at My Mattress. Labor Day is our biggest sale of the year, and it's in full force right now. Both My Mattress stores have the best prices of the year. The North Store and the South Store. One by Big 5 Sports and the other by Red Balloon Toys. Choose from the world's 2 best beds, IntelliBed Purple and Tempur-Pedic. Prices will never be lower, and you will never sleep better than on one of those 2 beds. Up to 4 years, no interest financing available. The Labor Day sale at both My Mattress locations. Isn't it time to sleep exceptionally?
Summer is cruising by way too fast. It's already back to school time. Soon, you're going to start experiencing many special places and events that you won't forget, such as your first slide down Old Main Hill, attending Aggie football and basketball games, or a wild party at the How, and your first kiss on the Aggie Bowl. That might just lead to that extra special moment at Jarek's Fine Jewelry, Cache Valley's engagement ring store, where it's all about the romance. Just look for the bright green cars at 930 North Main Street.
Fall is in the air and it's getting colder. Make sure your vehicle is well maintained. Valvoline Instant Oil Change in Logan across from Aggies can help. As the weather turns colder, your car needs more babying and an oil change is easy. They'll change your oil and also check other fluid levels and replace your air filters if needed. The best thing, you can stay in your car while their trained professionals service your vehicle. Valvoline Instant Oil Change, 695 North Main, open 7 days a week.
Hi, I'm Smokey Bear, and I'm an assistant to help you prevent wildfires.
Dude, I've got this. I've been camping since I was 5 years old. But I am a camping influencer. You know what? I'll bet you $5. Assistant Smokey, what is the best way to put out a campfire?
To put out a campfire, drown with water, stir, drown again. Then make sure the fire is out cold by feeling with the back of your hand.
Wait, really?
I'll take the $5.
Learn more at SmokeyBear.com.
Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
The Aggies, the Jazz, the high schools, the Full Court Press on Sports Talk Radio, 106.9 FM, 1390 AM. The Fan.
Many thanks to Utah State Athletics Director Diana Sabau for coming on the show. I know it's always rocky when I'm trying to run the phones here, trying to get them on the show, and also making sure there's a smooth transition when we end the interview. But very glad that she could come on, just have a conversation, talk a little bit about athletics, state of Utah State, conference realignment, all that's going on. Now, she's been very open to answering questions. Like every time we're finishing interviews, like when we finish the press conference, like, is that all? She's been very open about wanting to answer questions, wanting to establish a relationship, and I think that's what you want to see. Somebody who's coming from the outside. That was one of the things that kind of caught people by surprise. You're bringing somebody from the outside, and it's a tough job for them to come in and try and assimilate themselves. They instantly go into a position of leadership, and they have to become familiar with, a community that's obviously very well established. So that's obviously a big part of her job right now. As she mentioned in the interview, a lot of her first week or so of the job has been going around talking to people, visiting donors, visiting coaches, talking to media. Obviously, she went down she was on TV over the weekend, coming to talk to us. So there's just so much with her job that she's dealing with right now, and eventually we'll get things established, and she'll be able to begin to make her impact here. And she's coming in at a very, we've said it over and over, she's coming in at a very volatile point, not only in Utah State athletics, trying to deal with a bunch of different things with football, basketball, on a very short-term level, with football trying to rebound, basketball trying to just rebuild its entire, roster and coaching staff. And then obviously with conference realignment, as, gone over and over, and there's a lot of tough things that need to be dealt with, and a lot of ways that can go right or wrong for Utah State. But wanted to continue talking about Utah State football. I wanted to kind of get back into that conversation. We'll see if Eric's able to make it here for the rest of the show, or for toward the end of the show. I don't know if that's actually going to happen because he's probably still waiting for practice to end, because he's gone off to talk to a couple of different players following Utah State practice. I forgot which ones. I don't know if he told me which players he's going to talk to. We did have a chance to hear from Michael Onyanwu and Cooper Legaw in the press conference on Monday. Had a conversation with them. Press conference conversation. Those aren't really conversations. They're more just, grilling guys with questions. But, we talked a lot about the defense in that first half. Utah State's offense against Iowa's defense, which feels like the big, that's the big question. Can Utah State score against Iowa's defense? If they can, then they're obviously going to have a chance. Whenever you can score points in a game, you have a chance. But, another thing about this, obviously Utah State's defense, if they're not stopping Iowa, if Iowa is able to rebound, or at least for this game, rebound and have a good, if I was able to have a good offensive game, then suddenly not only is that, putting pressure on Utah State's offense, it could just, if the offense ends up not scoring a ton of points, then, everything goes out the window. Because I don't expect Utah State to score much more than 14, 17 points. Like, a great game for the offense would probably lead to them scoring like 21 points. But if the defense is giving up a ton to Iowa's offense, then suddenly the challenge becomes that harder. So the better Utah State's defense plays, then obviously the easier it is for Utah State's offense to overcome the Iowa defense challenge. Because if the challenge in overcoming Iowa's defense only requires 14 points, then that's something that I think Utah State's offense can do. If the challenge requires them to score 21, 28 points, I don't know if that's something Utah State's offense can do. Iowa's defense has given up more than, like last year, Iowa's defense gave up more than 13 points 3 times. 2 of those were to teams that at the time were ranked in the top 4. They allowed Ohio State and Michigan. They both put up a bunch of points on Iowa's defense. And there was one other, I forgot to write down who it was. It's just some random team. Iowa doesn't give up a ton of points. But I think just as key as obviously Utah State's offense doing well, the defense needs to make the challenge easier for the Aggies' offense. So what does Iowa's offense look like? They're a team that's been, maligned for not being able to move the ball. Mentioned toward the start of the show. There's, they weren't very good last year. They were in like all the 120s for like most of the defensive categories. Are they going to be better this year? Well, there's hope. They have a couple of transfers who are set to play big roles as far as skill positions. The one whose name you'll likely have heard of, Cade McNamara. He was a former Michigan quarterback. In 2021, he had a pretty good year. Played 14 games. I think he led Michigan to the playoff that year, if I recall. He played 14 games that season. He completed 64% of his passes. Not a ton of volume yards, only 2,500 yards, almost 2,600 yards. Michigan a bit more of a running team. Had 15 touchdown passes to 6 interceptions. Wasn't much of a runner, at least in terms of gaining yards on the ground. I think he had something like less than 40 rushing yards the whole season and I think maybe 1 touchdown. So he's not this super mobile, gonna scramble and run type of quarterback. But after having a solid year and helping Michigan to a great season, he got basically benched in 2022. Only played 3 games. And then he transfers to Iowa. Lost his job, go to Iowa, try and reinvent your career. Certainly not uncommon for Power 5 quarterbacks. Have a good year, underwhelming, follow-up, sophomore slump, go somewhere else. We've seen it a lot. So there's a lot of hopes that he'll be able to revive Iowa's offense. Not so much that he's going to suddenly, they're going to become this gunslinging team. They're a rushing team. But just to kind of summarize a little bit of Iowa's defense, hear a little bit from Blake Anderson. I believe there was a quote that I clipped from them about Iowa's offense. And what they're kind of bringing to the table that obviously you have to be able to stop from them.
Being able to match their physicality up front. They're going to bring the ball downhill, big running backs, multiple tight ends, fullback, H-back type guys, all of which can block and then catch the ball. They can be in any formation. A lot of eye candy. Very similar to what we've seen from Wyoming in the past. You've got to come downhill and be physical at the point of attack. That exposes you in the back end. And so defend the big shot, bottle up the run, make them uncomfortable. But that's a huge challenge. There's very few matchups across the front that are going to be in our favor, if any, at all. So a lot of hats to the ball, tackle well, and make them snap it again. Hope that we can create some turnovers. We can get them off schedule, maybe benefit from some motion penalties and just early game mistakes, early season mistakes, and be opportunistic. But if you don't play physical ball, it's not going to matter. They're going to run it right down your throat and keep the clock running and keep us off the field. So it starts up front on both sides of the ball.
So yeah, that's Iowa, classic Big Ten team. Be physical up front, and obviously kind of the beginning, Blake was just talking about the keys to slowing down Iowa. You got to match their physicality. That's something that you're hoping Utah State's defense will do. They've added a couple of, big defensive linemen. Of course, a lot of the guys they've put at the top of the depth chart are returning players, actually. So they don't have as many of the big players that they added, the big, 300-pound Sir Mells and Cliff Mosley. They're a little bit further down on the depth chart. But again, it's not so much about size. We talked about it when we brought up the fact that Utah State's defense is bigger, the defensive line. His added size on with those down linemen. They need to be able to use that size effectively. So it's not so much about just throwing out the biggest players, it's throwing out the players who are going to be able to throw their weight around the best. Seni Tuiaki is only about 280, 285, but if he's able to throw that weight around effectively, and if Hale Motuapuaka, if he's healthy, can he throw around his 290 pounds effectively enough? Can Paul Fitzgerald, Inoki Miguel, those are 2 young guys, and they're a bit smaller. They're 245, 255, in that range. As far as their weight, can they match the physicality? Can they use what size and length they have against Iowa's offensive tackles? Get Cade McNamara off schedule. And then obviously the defensive line not allowing the run game to get going and not allowing the running back to get downhill. And honestly, looking at their running back, they had a freshman starting at running back last year. He's returned. You got Caleb Johnson. He's a 6', 222-pound running back. And as a freshman, he was averaging like 3, almost 4 yards. According to PFF, who kind of keeps some of these statistics I'm about to cite. It was like 3, almost 4 yards after contact. This is a guy who's able to gain yards after he's taken the first hit. And Utah State's going to have to be able to get this guy down. You do got MJ Tufisi who's going to be running in there, 6'2", 250 pounds. Can he tackle effectively? But can Max Alford tackle effectively? Your safety's going to be able to tackle effectively. Are the defensive tackles, are they going to be able to fill the lanes and make sure that there's not, room for him to just get downhill and just be able to slam into the running backs or slam into the linebackers and turn a 3-yard gain into a 7-yard gain? Because that's obviously the danger with some of these running backs. Obviously, some plays, they break a couple of arm tackles and they go for 20. Those can be a bit of backbreakers, but when you're on, 2nd and 7, and maybe you thought you stuffed a guy for 1 or 2 yards, and then suddenly he's getting a first down on a 7-yard gain, that can be just as much of a back-breaking play because you thought you were going to set up a 3rd and medium, maybe 3rd and kind of long-ish, and suddenly you're moving the chains again. That can be the demoralizing when that's happening over and over and over again, especially late in the game. When these bigger running backs are able to turn 2-3-yard gains into 7 and 8-yard gains. That can make the difference, especially if it's a late game. Maybe Iowa's trying to run on the clock. Maybe they're up 13-10. Utah State's trying to get the ball back, and they want to kick a field goal or score a touchdown or whatnot. The defense is going to need to be able to stop the offense, stop the run game. And that'll be a challenge. Going up against big physical guys on a hot day in Iowa. Are the Aggies going to be able to do that? And we'll find out. And then we need to take another break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the Aggies in the NFL. Rosters were trimmed down to 53 players today. I know there's going to be a little bit more shuffling back and forth. Some players going to get cut. When some teams trim down their rosters, other teams are like, ooh, we want that guy. And so they shift their roster around. But for now, you've got 8 former Aggies that are on 53-man rosters. We'll go over who they are. We'll go over the guys who unfortunately were cut. Maybe talk about their chances of getting re-signed. So we'll see how that goes. We'll talk about that next here on the Full Court Press.
Advanced Fireplace and Stove wants to thank you for voting them 3 years running the gold medal winners in the Best of Northern Utah contest. With over 35 display models in their showroom, their goal is to make the process of making your home comfortable and cozy an easy experience. With premier brands like Napoleon and Dimplex, they have something for every style, every home, every budget. Building or renovating, they've got you covered. Advanced Fireplace and Stove, where comfort is their business.
When it comes to home care, it's important to know you have a choice. If you or a loved one is in need of hospice or home health services, remember that Primrose Home Care and Hospice believes in treating the patient as well as the problem. We work directly with you and your doctor to create a health plan that's catered to your needs. Our team is devoted to providing options in the freedom and safety of your own home. Visit us at primrosecare.com or call to schedule a free consultation. Primrose Home Care and Hospice, your local hospice and home health provider since 2006.
Saturday on Compass Media Network's coverage of NCAA football. The hunt for the national championship begins in Happy Valley as the 7th-ranked Penn State Nittany Lions host the West Virginia Mountaineers. Hi, this is TJ Reed. Join LeVar Arrington and me for all the action as James Franklin and the Nittany Lions get a tough opening week test against upset-minded West Virginia. It's number 7 Penn State and West Virginia. If it's NCAA football, it's right here.
Pre-game begins Saturday at 5 on Sports Talk Radio, 106.9 FM, 1390 AM, The Fan.
High school sports are as American as apple pie. And going to a game or meet is a chance to see the stars of tomorrow shine today. But as anybody who's ever attended a high school sporting event in Utah knows, you can't have the stars without the stripes. High schools are currently looking for new officials in almost every sport. Who looks good in stripes? Anybody looking for a way to stay connected to a sport they love. If you like the idea of giving back to your community while earning a few extra bucks, chances are you'd look good in stripes too. We want to hear from you. We need to hear from you. No officials means no games. No stripes means no stars. And what kind of America would that be? Utah needs more high school officials. Go to highschoolofficials.com to sign up or learn more. That's highschoolofficials.com.
For more than a century, AM radio has evolved to meet the needs of our community. More than 80 million listeners depend on AM radio each month. AM radio is also the backbone of the emergency alert system, which keeps us safe in dangerous times. It's reliable, free, and public safety depends on it. Text AM to 52886 and tell Congress we need AM radio in cars.
Message and data rates may apply. You may receive up to 4 messages a month, and you may text STOP to stop.
This message furnished by the National Association of Broadcasters.
Following the local teams, it's the Full Court Press with Eric Franson and Jason Walker.
Some nice upbeat music to help you through the 5 o'clock hour. Of course, we also got the Full Court Press. Jason Walker with you here. Eric had to leave a little early, right before the 5 o'clock hour in our interview with Diana Sabau. We had her on at the beginning of the hour. You can go back. We'll post that, just that portion of that interview. We'll segment that off from our normal second hour podcast. You'll be able to listen to just that if you want to catch the full thing. Had a nice conversation. Obviously, there's not a ton that she can be super open about as far as nitty gritty and specifics, but a good conversation just about her first little bit here in Logan, her experience trying to assimilate into the culture here, assimilate into just the Utah State community program, and obviously playing a leadership role where she's got to run around, talk to a bunch of people, and help Utah State through a tough time while she herself is trying to, like I said, assimilate into Utah State culture while simultaneously leading them to a better future. But she's obviously putting her nose to the grindstone and trying to get things working. But wanted to go talk about Aggies in the NFL. Obviously, for a lot of Utah State players, they're kind of on the bubble with NFL rosters. There's some players we knew we were going to make rosters, Bobby Wagner, Jordan Love, Patrick Scales. Those guys, they're on their teams. They're regular part, like Patrick Scales, just someday he's just going to retire because, but he's a long snapper. Like, as long as he's still, able to snap the ball and is still willing to go through the NFL grind, he's basically going to have a job. So, obviously those three. So, Bobby Wagner with Seattle Seahawks, Jordan Love with the Green Bay Packers, Patrick Scales with the Chicago Bears. They are all on rosters. Some other players who made the initial 53-man roster. Now, there's still going to be some volatility. There are guys who are going to get cut and signed, or cut and re-signed by some teams over the next few days because there is a bit of roster volatility right after these rosters are cut down to 53 players. So not all these players are safe yet, but the fact they make the initial cut, certainly a good sign for these players. Derek Wright, a player I wasn't so sure was going to make the 53-man roster of the Carolina Panthers, especially because he had a knee injury he began nursing, and that can be, when you're on the roster bubble and you get an injury, it's like a kiss of death. And it's absolutely not fair. But it's how life is. But despite the fact that he got injured, he's on the roster bubble, he makes the final roster for initially for the Carolina Panthers. So a former receiver for the Aggies, making that final roster. Jalen Davis, he's another one we were pretty sure about. He's a consistent contributor, kind of reserve/rotation corner, kind of a nickel corner. It's the role he's played most of his career. So he's with the Cincinnati Bengals. Dallin Levitt, who he's listed at safety, spends most of his time playing special teams. That's been his role with both the Raiders and now with the Green Bay Packers, which is where he's at. So a couple of Aggies on the Green Bay Packers. You've also got Jalen Warren. He's there, in the running back room for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's obviously there last year, able to make the roster again this year. So obviously he's not the top guy, but you'll see him get carries every now and again. And, if health of the guys in front of him dictates it, you could see him get a few more carries. Obviously had the big carry, the 62-yard touchdown, I think in the second preseason game. As I mentioned, Bobby Wagner, and then Devin Tompkins. He's the final of the 8 Aggies that I was able to track down. I might have missed somebody. I was trying to double check, but it's always hard for me to either remember every Aggie that could be in the NFL and looking them up, and resources to just search NFL players by colleges is somewhat unreliable. For instance, I initially looked it up, and Jaylen Warren wasn't listed under former Utah State players. He transferred from Utah State to Oklahoma State. But anyway, so those are the 8 that have made NFL rosters so far. Derek Wright, Patrick Scales, Jalen Davis, Dallin Levitt, Jordan Love, Jaylen Warren, Bobby Wagner, and Devin Tompkins. Tompkins, he's mainly the return guy, punt returner, kick returner for the Buccaneers. He'll be on the fringe as far as getting, passing snaps, targets. I know the Buccaneers lost kind of their third wide receiver on their depth chart to a season-ending injury. Maybe Tompkins is able to jump in there. But he does have, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are guys that are going to get the majority of targets and yards off of Baker Mayfield. Guys who got cut, unfortunately, weren't able to make rosters. Maybe they get picked up by somebody. Maybe they make the practice squad of the team that cut them. We'll just kind of have to wait and see. I'm horrible at guessing these things. So, unfortunately, I don't have much of an idea as to how likely they are to retain a spot somewhere in the NFL. Brian Cobbs with the Arizona Cardinals wasn't really playing a whole lot in preseason. I don't know if he recorded any stats. I don't know how many snaps he actually played, but just, couldn't make the cut with the Arizona Cardinals. Calvin Tyler Jr., Cincinnati Bengals, got cut there. Wasn't seeing a whole lot of time, unfortunately, with the Bengals either. They end up cutting him. Darwin Thompson with, for some reason my notes say Carolina, but he was with the Raiders. He signed with them right before preseason, maybe a little bit into preseason. Didn't get a whole lot of snaps. I know he's played a little bit more special teams on some of the last, because he was with the Chiefs. I think he was with the Seahawks, if I'm remembering. Something in my mind makes me think that Darwin Thompson spent time with the Seahawks. But just not making it with the Raiders there. Nick Vigil, bit of a surprise cut. Actually, these next two players, I was a little surprised they were cut. Vigil, he's toward the end of his career as 29-year-old linebacker. He's been a, fringe starter, maybe kind of rotation linebacker, maybe a special teams guy. But I thought he would still find a place with the New York Jets, but he got cut. Tyler Larson, offensive lineman, he was a center for Washington. He's had some injury troubles. He was on a veteran minimum contract, but they cut him. I've seen some people who might know better than I do as far as the NFL that he may end up just getting re-signed by Washington, because that actually happens to some players, is they'll get cut and then re-signed after the 53-man roster deadline. So that's maybe possible. We'll keep an eye on that. So I imagine a couple of these guys will end up on either practice squads, or in the case of Larson or Vigil, maybe somebody picks them up, as a depth piece for their team. We'll have to keep an eye on that. So for now, we got 8 Aggies in the NFL for the upcoming 2023 season, and we'll certainly keep you updated on these players throughout the season, their exploits, what's going on. I'm also in the process of tracking all the different former Aggies, former basketball players in the pros. RJ Adelrock actually signed a contract with a team in England today. And so I'll start keeping track of former Aggies in the basketball pros, because we've got several out there. Dan Atkin, RJ Adelrock, Justin Bean. There's a couple others I'm forgetting. Well, obviously there's the guys in the NFL. I was just thinking of the guys that went over to Europe. You got Neemias Queta, Sam Merrill. Neemias Queta may be getting, screwed over again today, because the Kings are maybe looking to sign JaVale McGee. So Kings are going to king. They committed to having Neemias Queta, and then they continue to sign other backup centers. But such is the world. Anyway, we're going to take another break. On the other side, we'll finish things up. I'll give you the stat that blew my mind. I know Eric's not here, but I'll give the stat that blew my mind, and then a player of the week. Don't go away. We've got that coming up next.
Hi, this is Gene Needham of SC Needham Jewelers. I would like to welcome all USU students back to Logan. Perhaps this is the year you'll get engaged. Thousands of Aggies have shopped our store over the past century. We are Utah's oldest jewelry store. My children, Sylvan, JD, Elizabeth, Stewart, and Stratford represent our 5th generation of jewelers. When choosing a ring, visit our website at scneedham.com or simply visit our store in downtown Logan, where Utah gets engaged. SC Needham Jewelers, middle of the block at the sun of the clock.
Cache Valley Ear, Nose, and Throat, the Allergy Clinic and Hearing Aid Center are conveniently located at 2 locations, North Logan inside the new Three Peaks Medical Plaza and Providence on Gateway Drive. Doctors Benyon, Blotter, and Robinette, along with the entire staff, have over 75 years of combined medical experience, guaranteeing your family the very best patient care. Cache Valley Ear, Nose, and Throat serves all of northern Utah and southern Idaho and accepts most insurance products, including SelectMed. Go to CacheValleyENT.com for appointments and details. Cache Valley Ear, Nose, and Throat, North Logan and Providence.
Les Olson IT structured cabling is second to none. Tired of old and inefficient cabling? Have an upgrade or remodel planned? Building a new network from the ground up? We offer the very best in low voltage cabling installation, including data, phone, fiber optic, and more. Ask us how to get your free consultation today.
Les Olson IT.
Thursday on Compass Media Network's coverage of NCAA football. We kick off the 2023 season with a cross-country showdown as Cam Rising and the 14th-ranked Utah Utes host Graham Mertz and the Florida Gators. Hi, it's Greg Daniels. Join Chad Brown and me for all the action as the hunt for the college football playoffs starts now. It's number 14 Utah hosting Florida. If it's NCAA football, it's right here.
Pregame begins Thursday afternoon at 5:30 on Sports Talk Radio, 106.9 FM, 1390 AM, The Fan.
We are there in your community. Small business owners, mechanics, police officers, homemakers. And we are there serving our nation in the Air Force Reserve. When medical emergencies arise, we meet the challenge. In cybersecurity, protecting and defending in cyberspace. When natural disasters happen, we are there in space. As a strong part of the nation's defense, we are there in the community and we are there for our nation. We share a vision to make a difference, united and focused, taking pride in being there in service of our country. We are Reserve Citizen Airmen, and we are there with over 180 different jobs to serve your country. Air Force Reserve.
The Aggies are #1 here. The Full Court Press. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and online at 1069thefan.com.
Valvoline Instant Oil Change is open 7 days a week. So any day you need to get your oil changed, they're over at 695 North Main in Logan. If you're like me and you get confused by addresses, that's just right across the street from Aggies. It's where I get my oil changed. Don't need an oil change for a little bit, but certainly when it comes around, you can go to Valvoline Instant Oil Change any day of the week. Just closing up shop here on the show, we have the stat that blew our minds, or blew my mind. Eric, unfortunately, got hung up waiting for the end of Utah State practice. We'll probably be able to play those interviews on the show tomorrow and have that sound for you. But obviously, we'll have more sound. We'll continue to share from the press conference, and we'll see if we can find comments from Iowa's head coach. But I wanted to share at least the stat that blew my mind because it was a fun one this week. I know sometimes I'll just find one on the interwebs. But this one, I thought it was interesting, and it plays off of, Green Canyon High School and their defense. So they've played 3 games. It was Hunter, Highland was their most recent one, and I'm suddenly forgetting the team they played in between, Stansbury. So they've played those 3 opponents this week. And so Hunter, Stansbury, and Highland, if you exclude their collective games against, Green Canes, assume that they, throw out those scores, then those 3 teams would be averaging a combined 34.5 points per game. And mind you, there's not just like one team kind of buoying it up. Because, Highland, they scored like 35 points in both their first 2 games. Hunter, in the games since they played Green Canyon, put up like 40 points apiece. Stansbury is like the lowest scoring one, and they've got games where they scored 28, and I think another one where they scored in the 30s. And they're the lowest scoring of Green Canyon's 3 opponents. So there are teams that collectively, aside from when they play Green Canyon, average 34.5 points. And obviously, if you're listening to the show, then you'll know that Green Canyon has allowed 11 points total. So when Green Canyon's opponents aren't playing the Wolves, they average almost 35 points a game. When they play the Wolves, they average less than 4 per game. So Green Canyon playing good offenses and absolutely shutting them down, which is certainly going to set up some really good matchups in region play. Ridgeline, obviously Skyview with some pretty dang good offenses. So that'll do it for us today. Thank you so much for listening to the Full Court Press. We'll have the full Diana Sabau interview posted in just a few minutes here. Join us tomorrow.